Grace and peace, and thank you for joining me for Wednesdays in the Word. I thank you for supporting the ministry of Pentecostal Church of Christ. Thank you for listening to each broadcast. Thank you for praying for us. We appreciate your support. Listen, we want to continue to remind you, if you're not connected to the church or connected to the ministry, you can go to pcccleveland.org and get connected. We want to be able to reach out to you, to communicate with you, and keep you aware of the things that are going on in the ministry. Even during this pandemic season, we are still ministering. We are still moving. We may not be gathering in the sanctuary, but the ministry continues. So let me say to those of you who are still concerned about when we might gather, you are listening to the news just as I am. It's disappointing, it's disheartening, but we don't want to take any chances with the members, the lives of the congregation of Pentecostal Church of Christ. And so we are being extremely cautious, and we hope that you are being safe in your homes. And if you're working, if you're in school, whatever you are doing, please be safe. Take care of yourself and your families. I look forward to when we'll gather again. Not quite sure when that time is or when that will be, but it will be great. But in the meantime, there's a word from the Lord. Let's go to the word of the Lord for these moments that we have to share together for Wednesdays in the Word, our midweek Bible study. And I want to read in your hearing 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 16 through 18. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 16 through 18. And it reads as such: At my first defense, no one stood with me, but all forsook me. May it not be charged against them, but the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, so that the message might be preached fully through me, and that all the Gentiles might hear. And I was delivered out of the mouth of the lion. And the Lord will deliver me from every evil work and preserve me for his heavenly kingdom. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen. I appreciate this lesson because it deals with a man, Paul to be specific, who was experiencing a time that seemed as if he was alone. And there are so many that are experiencing something similar to that, particularly in this season. But there have been other times prior to the pandemic where you had those moments where you felt like you were all alone and that you had no support. I want to encourage you with this message. At some point in time, most of us, if not all of us, have experienced a form of abandonment. Whether the loss was a result of a breakup or a betrayal, the feelings of aloneness and helplessness surface. They come to the top. They rise. Our adult functioning temporarily collapses, and we feel shattered and bewildered and condemned to loneliness. These feelings are a result of the crucial loss of connectedness. Oh, can we talk about that today in this season? The crucial loss of connectedness. I remember my first experience with abandonment, and it's my own personal story. It's being transparent, and I've said it before, and I'll say it here again, because it was my first experience to actually feel like I was being disconnected or I was being left behind. And that was what happened as it relates to when my father left home. He disconnected himself from his family, leaving a wife and 3 children. And the expectation that my father would always be there was actually shattered by the reality that he had walked away. And so that feeling of being connected, left behind, abandoned, it rose to the surface, and it kind of just overtook my life and my thinking. It did not do a whole lot of damage, I don't think, but it did impact me emotionally. I experienced something else later in life as it relates to a girlfriend, a friend, somebody that I had been very close to. As a matter of fact, I'd allowed this person to live with me in my apartment. We shared an apartment when she had no place else to go, mind you. And somewhere along the line, I don't know what happened. I don't know to this day, and this was many, many years ago, but she decided to stop talking or communicating. She disconnected herself from me. And it was out of nowhere, and I didn't have my friend anymore. I didn't know why. She started ignoring me. She stopped talking to me, and she stopped calling me. I tried to figure it out. I tried to find out why she was acting so differently, but she was distant and even seemed angry. I asked her what I had done, but I never got an answer. She continued to avoid me without an explanation. The pain of that loss was almost unbearable because I literally believed she would always be my friend. Somebody understands the pain or the loss of being disconnected or not connected. However you want to say it, there is a feeling of loss when you cannot feel yourself connected, especially to those whom you love. It was disappointing. And it was a loss that had to be reckoned with. There is a void that seems impossible to fill. If you've experienced this situation at all on any level, there's a void that seems impossible to fill. It's a loss of connectedness, and no one wants to feel cut off. No one. If you could control this, you would. If we could remain connected to everybody that we want to be connected to, we would. We would do that. We would make that happen. The thing is, however, abandonment is abandonment because someone other than you made the choice. That's why it's abandonment. And occasionally, there are circumstances when the feeling of being abandoned does not necessarily come from someone walking out of your life. And an example of that is what you find yourself doing when you find yourself doing a good thing or the right thing, and you seem to be alone. You seem to be connected. It's not necessarily that anyone walked away, but you're doing what you believe is right. You're doing what you believe is good. You are doing what you were destined to do, and even what you have been called to do. And yet, loneliness is the one emotion that continues to rise above all others. I don't know who I'm talking to this evening, but somebody is in that lonely place. And it's not because anybody walked away, but even in the midst of your ministry, even in the midst of your good work, even in the midst of your helping people and ministering to others, you feel alone. Whatever the case, it is not a good feeling when one perceives that he or she has no support. Well, the character in our text has experienced a loss. He is in prison while he writes this letter to Timothy, asking Timothy to come to him as quickly as he can. He expressed that his colleagues in ministry have abandoned him as he attends his first court hearing. Yeah, it's something to feel like or believe or hope that if you get in a really tight situation that the folks that you believed to be your supporters would show up and be present on your behalf. Well, that wasn't the case here. Timothy gets a letter that says, none of my folks showed up. The text says, at my first defense, no one stood with me, but all forsook me. There were men who had been with Paul, but when Paul needed them most, they left him. I can only imagine what it must have been like for him to stand in court, to stand before a judge and have absolutely no one to speak on his behalf. Paul said, all forsook me. The word forsook in Greek is a compound word. Let me run through this quickly. It's a compound word. It's a combination of three words, actually. These are out, down, and leave or forsake. When you look at it in the Greek, it's broken up into three words: out, down, leave, or forsake. When all three of these words are joined to form a triple compound word, the new word carries the idea of walking out on, leaving, walking out on someone, leaving someone in a terrible condition, abandoning a person at the worst possible moment, and deserting a person in the most terrible way. In other words, it conveys the idea of abandonment. By using this word, Paul is saying, not only did they not come forward to support me and to stand with me, they walked out on me and abandoned me at the worst possible time. Who am I talking to? Who have you had in your life? Or what is that situation that you have experienced when things go wrong and people walk away and all you can say is, not now. Now? You would walk away now at the time I need you the most? That was Paul's experience. They have walked out. They have abandoned me at the worst possible moment. When you are at your lowest point, when you need someone the most, when you thought you can count on that one somebody, they don't just sit silently, but they actually walk away. Somebody say abandoned. But the thing that impresses me is that Paul does not remain in a place of self-pity. You got to get this. We may experience the abandonment. We may admit and confront and be transparent enough to say, yes, I've been walked out on. I've been abandoned. And it happened at the worst possible time. But here it is right here in the text. Paul did not stay in a place of self-pity. He did not let it keep him down. Even though he emphasizes how difficult his situation was, he does not allow himself, here we go, to become bitter. First, he says, let it not be charged against them. He announces that they didn't show up for it. He announces that they walked out at the worst possible time. And then he follows it up with, but don't let it be charged against them. We're not going to even blame them for it. We're not going to even accuse them. Just let it go. Just let it go. Let it not be charged against them. In other words, even though my friends left me behind, I don't hold it against them. Even though they abandoned me at the worst possible moment, I don't blame them. Paul did not develop a negative attitude or spend, I should say. He did not spend time dwelling on the fact that they didn't show up. He mentioned it and then he moved forward. He didn't spend a lot of time talking about how terrible his deserters were. Instead, he flipped the script. Verse 17 says, but the Lord stood with me and strengthened me. They didn't show up. They disappointed me. They let me down. But you know what? It's okay. Because the Lord stood with me and strengthened me. Now, I would think that it would have been enough just for the Lord to stand with Paul. After all, that's what his complaint was really about. That no one showed up to stand with him. He said, no one stood with me. He had no one to defend him or to support him, to stand with him. But Paul's testimony is that not only did the Lord stand with him, but he strengthened him. In other words, the Lord did not just show up to support or to undergird me. That would have been enough. He did not only stand with me, but he strengthened me. Let's go to the Greek again. And the Greek word strengthened refers to an empowerment or an inner strengthening. It is a compound of two words, en, and dunamis. The en means in. The word dunamis means explosive strength, ability, and power. It is where we get the word dynamite. The word presents the picture of an explosive power that is being deposited into some type of container. Woo! Yes, God. Some form of a receptacle. This is what Paul is saying. He strengthened me. The very nature of this word means that there necessarily must be some type of receiver into which this power is deposited. He strengthened me. What Paul is saying to us is that the Lord stood with him and filled him with an inner power that was explosive like dynamite. So what does this mean for us this evening? In the moment when Paul felt abandoned, he received a supernatural infilling of divine power. And that power, that divine power, literally supercharged him. He was in an awesome position. And it supercharged him to face one of the most difficult times in his life. Listen, I get excited thinking about what God does for us and the things that he does to help us and to comfort us and to deliver us. And he shows up at the time we need him most. Paul is standing there. He's standing there alone. There's nobody to comfort him, to stand with him, to speak on his behalf. He doesn't dwell on it. He decides, listen, don't charge them with that. I'm not going to even dwell on it. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to be bitter, because guess what? The Lord stood with me and he strengthened me and he filled me with a power like only he can. I was the receptacle for receiving this dunamis, this explosive power. And so, because of him, I could face what was to come. One of his most difficult times in life. The moment he discovered he did not have a friend was the moment God empowered him to deal with a hard time. You should know today that God does not think any less of you than he thought of Paul. He is not a respecter of person. If you are dealing with feelings of loneliness and abandonment, God will stand by your side and strengthen you. He will help you. He will empower you to stand, even if you have to stand alone. And that just might be the case in your life and in this season. But God will give you the power to stand there and to stand alone. I want to encourage somebody this evening. God is with you. He's with you in the hard times. He's with you in the difficult times, in those emotional times, those times of struggle. He gives you strength to stand. I want you to remember that. I need you to call that back up in the days ahead when you're feeling lonely, when you're feeling abandoned, when you feel like the friends and the folk that you could count on would show up and they don't. Remember, God will stand with you, and then he'll give you that added bonus. He'll strengthen you. Yes, you can count on it. You have a purpose, and that's what's important. God has a purpose for your life, for your future, and that's why he's going to stand with you. That's why he's going to strengthen you. Paul knew his purpose. Verse 17 tells us that Paul understood that God stood with him and strengthened him so that, here we go, here's the purpose, so that the message might be preached fully through me and that all the Gentiles might hear. He was not strengthened without cause. He was not empowered just for the sake of being strong, but he was empowered to minister, to preach the gospel. Listen, we're not going to keep praying for strength just to have strength. If we're praying for strength, it's praying for strength with purpose. There is purpose. I need to be strong. I need to be empowered because there is something that God has called me to. There is purpose for my life. And he's going to stand with me. He's going to stand with you. Listen, I'm encouraging myself tonight. I'm encouraging myself because there are those who I expected to stand with me. And listen, it doesn't even matter. I don't even have time to consider it or worry about it or be bitter about it. I chuckle at it at this point in my life because I know God has purpose. I know he's called me to his purpose. I'm here to do the will of the Lord. And so even though there may be those who have walked away or abandoned and I thought that they would remain and I thought that they would be there to stand with me, I know that the Lord is standing with me. And I know that he has strengthened me to do what he has called me to do. I need you to understand that the Lord is going to be with you. You are not alone. Just trust him. Don't allow yourself to become bitter. Know that he's with you. He stands with you. All will be well and you will make it. You will make it. Don't allow the feelings of loneliness to overtake you. You are not alone. And I'm praying for those of you who have been suffering in this season, worried about those who you thought would be supportive and those that you thought would come alongside of you and help you, and they did not. The Lord is going to stand with you. The Lord is going to provide, and the Lord is going to give you power to do what your purpose is. So listen, Let's remember what the word of the Lord is saying. Go back and study the text and look at what Paul had to endure, and yet he overcame. I'm excited. I'm excited because no matter what I choose to do, or no matter what state I find myself in, the Lord is with me. He's also with you. The Lord is filling me with his power. He's giving me strength. And so it is with you. And I'm going to continue to pray with you and continue to pray for you. You be blessed this evening. Take this message with you. Let it bless you throughout the rest of this week, the rest of this year, remembering that you're not alone. Repeat it to yourself over and over again. I am not alone. Be blessed. Stay connected. If you're not already connected, get connected. Go to pcccleveland.org. Pay attention to the information that's on the bottom of the screen. You've seen it during the time that I've been talking and speaking. We want you to remain connected, and we want to continue to pray for you. Give us your information. We'll reach out to you. Thank you for your support. The blessings of the Lord be upon you and keep you and give you peace. God bless you.